Hold on until you catch the tough questions you believed you'd encountered earlier. Jasmine Crockett confronted President Trump right there on stage, flipping his own statements back at him. The outcome that followed stunned the entire room. You could end up rising to applaud once you listened to it. The lights shone intensely, the platform was prepared, and the cameras were capturing everything. Inside the studio, the vibe felt nearly serene, that sort of tranquility that encourages you to relax and truly absorb the words. Seated with assurance, attired neatly yet understated, Jasmine Crockett addressed the camera straightforwardly. Her tone remained fluid and distinct, blending just the right amount of composure and command. She avoided yelling. She showed no anger. She simply outlined, one step at a time, how the bill under discussion might harm millions of families from the working class. You noticed the audience focusing closely, a few nodding along, others jotting down points. Jasmine possessed a talent for simplifying complex matters. She described how the policy could increase expenses for ordinary folks, how it might complicate life rather than simplify it. Her delivery stayed consistent, nearly reassuring, as though conveying, "Stay calm. This is what matters." But suddenly, the dynamic shifted. From the distant side of the table, President Donald Trump bent forward. The change happened so abruptly, even the moderator appeared taken aback. Then, with a tone that echoed throughout the space, Trump interrupted her. "She's not even American," the phrase struck like a thunderbolt. The studio fell utterly quiet. The atmosphere grew dense, as though all had observed something unintended. The moderator's brows lifted sharply. The camera handler paused, uncertain if to close in or switch to a broader view. Yet Jasmine remained steady. She displayed no fear. She didn't appear surprised at all. Gradually, she directed her gaze toward Trump and responded in a tone so composed, it amplified the unease in the quiet. "Mr. President, that's quite a serious claim. Can you provide evidence for it immediately?" The crowd adjusted in their chairs. This had moved beyond humor. This wasn't merely an intense discussion. This had become intimate. Trump paused briefly, sufficiently for all to observe, before restating his assertion, this time with more volume. He tapped his hand gently on the surface and declared, "She's not American. She doesn't speak for you." Yet still, no evidence. And Jasmine, she refrained from elevating her volume. She held back from immediate rebuttal. She simply allowed the quiet to linger momentarily, letting everyone sense the gravity of the recent statement. At last, she replied once more, measured and intentional, "Mr. President. You've just informed millions that I have no place here, that I'm outside this nation. You've directed that at me. Now demonstrate it." The moderator's gaze expanded. The camera shifted to Trump's expression, then returned to Jasmine's. The strain felt so dense, you could nearly detect the backstage team suppressing their breaths. And then, silence. Trump offered no paperwork. He referenced no statute. He provided not one detail. He merely remained seated, reiterating the charge as if repetition would somehow validate it. The crowd stayed fixed in place. Some murmured, others shook their heads in disbelief. All sensed it. A major development loomed because Jasmine hadn't concluded. Far from it. The strain within the studio already pressed heavily. You could perceive it via the broadcast, that odd blend of apprehension and anticipation when the unforeseen looms. But rather than easing the situation, Trump edged nearer. His delivery sharpened further, more direct, and then he crossed that line. He stared directly at Jasmine, pointed a finger her way, and declared, "Observe her. Does she seem like a person who embodies America to you?" A surge of inhales rippled across the crowd. It no longer concerned policy, no longer a dispute over legislation. This had turned personal. This felt unfiltered. Jasmine's demeanor stayed unchanged, without a single flicker. She held off on immediate retaliation. Instead, she permitted his statements to drift in the atmosphere like remnants from a blaze, allowing all present to grasp their full weight. The moderator appeared unsettled. Audience members exchanged whispers, their glances bouncing between Jasmine and Trump, anticipating a reply. At last, Jasmine inhaled deeply, adjusted her posture, and responded in a composed, restrained tone. Mr. President, your recent words explain precisely why numerous Americans sense they're overlooked. You've just doubted my presence here due to my skin's hue. That constitutes racism, straightforward and unadorned. The statement struck like a blow to the stomach. For an instant, only the subtle buzz of the studio illumination filled the air. Then scattered applause emerged from the crowd. A faint yes escaped from someone in the rear. Trump adjusted in his position, his expression stiffened, his jaw clenched. Yet Jasmine pressed on. I originated here. I matured here. My whole career has focused on serving this nation. My birth record confirms I'm American. My history affirms I'm American. But you, Mr. President, possess no counter-evidence. Zero. You merely dislike that an individual like me challenges you openly. The applause intensified. The crowd aligned with her. Now, Trump attempted to interject, gesturing with his hand, but Jasmine continued uninterrupted. Let's clarify this. This occurs when a leader fails to prevail in a debate using facts. They assail your essence. They target your appearance. They attempt to diminish you to evade addressing the actual issue. The camera focused closely on Trump's face. His mouth compressed as he strove to appear unaffected, but the pressure showed clearly. He lacked familiarity with such direct confrontation, not in real time, not before so many. And at that point, the room's vibe transformed. You could detect the crowd moving from astonishment to solidarity. Some affirmed with nods, others murmured among themselves. All awaited Trump's subsequent action. Would he retreat? Would he express regret? No. Instead, he reinforced his stance, proclaiming once more with increased volume that Jasmine lacked suitability to embody this nation. But now it rang hollower because Jasmine stayed unruffled. She showed no fury. She stood prepared. And she prepared to unveil a disclosure that would utterly invert the room's dynamic. The space already pulsed with tension. Jasmine had directly challenged the president on live broadcast, and the crowd perceived the change, but nobody, not one individual in that studio, anticipated the forthcoming revelation. Jasmine inclined forward a bit, her delivery serene, yet now edged with precision. If we're discussing who fits where, she stated, halting briefly enough for the crowd to cling to her phrases, then perhaps we ought to address your family as well, Mr. President. The crowd fell mute once more. You could almost detect every gaze pivoting toward Trump. Trump lifted his chin, squinting, nearly challenging her to proceed. And she did. You and Ivanka, Jasmine articulated deliberately, distinctly, are in fact the biological parents of Barron. It seemed as if the ground vanished beneath the whole space. Inhales resounded through the studio. The moderator stiffened, his mouth ajar halfway. You spotted someone in the back covering their mouth in astonishment. Trump's complexion reddened. He parted his lips, then sealed them. For a fleeting instant, the president, the individual perpetually verbose, appeared utterly wordless. But Jasmine hadn't concluded. She extended beneath the table and retrieved a slender dossier. The camera narrowed as she displayed it for all to view. These documents pose grave inquiries about Barron's lineage, she stated composedly. Medical histories, chronologies, elements your group has never confronted. The space seemed to collectively inhale. Trump emerged from his quiet, his tone abrupt and piercing. That's absurd. Complete fabrication. You're fabricating. But his delivery faltered faintly, just sufficiently for the crowd to detect. Jasmine stayed unmoved. She avoided amplifying her tone. She merely gazed directly at him and responded, if it's untrue, then substantiate it here and now. As president, you command every asset. Reveal the facts. The strain escalated dramatically. The cameras alternated between Jasmine's serene expression and Trump's clenching jaw. Briefly, Trump attempted to dismiss it with laughter, but the chuckle rang contrived, like an effort to feign composure. Jasmine reclined a touch in her seat, permitting him to perspire beneath the illumination. This extends beyond Barron, she proceeded. This concerns authority. It's about openness. It's about why Ivanka wields greater sway in your government than the First Lady. It's about why she participates in sessions with global figures representing this nation when no prior daughter has received such privilege. The group burst into murmurs. Some affirmed, some exchanged words. All perceived that Jasmine had reversed the narrative. She no longer defended. Trump gestured, charging Jasmine with invention, with assaulting his kin. But each rebuttal rang feebler than before. Jasmine's demeanor remained steady. Serene, restrained, nearly provoking him to elaborate. The moderator attempted to intervene, but the opportunity had passed. Jasmine had claimed the instant. This transcended mere debate. This constituted a clash. And Jasmine had cornered the nation's most influential figure. And the crowd sensed it. A far grander event loomed. Trump seethed. He nudged his chair rearward a bit, bent toward the mic, and attempted laughter. A brief, harsh chuckle that lacked authenticity. "This is rubbish," he declared, gesturing dismissively. "Utterly fabricated tale. I can't even fathom your source for that dossier." But the tremor in his tone exposed him. The crowd detected it. Jasmine detected it, and Jasmine refused to release. "If it's fabricated," she responded serenely, "then present the genuine facts. Why evade if nothing conceals?" Trump's features solidified. He faced the moderator. "This is shameful. She has no place on this platform. She's targeting my kin. It's repulsive." But the moderator refrained from quieting Jasmine. The camera lingered on her, granting her ample space to deliver another blow. "Mr. President," she articulated, her delivery firm, "you may hurl any insults, but that alters nothing regarding how Americans have witnessed your daughter in conferences with world leaders. They've observed her representing this nation. They've seen her positioned as the true First Lady while Melania recedes." The group hummed with murmurs. Some affirmed, some appeared astonished. Trump sought to interrupt. "Ivanka excels as a business leader. She's aiding the nation. She's highly esteemed." But Jasmine hadn't finished. "She's your offspring," Jasmine stated pointedly. "Not a chosen authority, yet she possesses influence unmatched by any prior first daughter. Why so? Why does she exceed the United States First Lady in impact?" Trump's complexion deepened in hue. He directed a finger at Jasmine. "You fabricate. You're disseminating wild theories. You're vile." But Jasmine stood firm. "On national TV, you once remarked that if Ivanka weren't your daughter, you might date her. You uttered it smiling. You echoed it in a periodical discussion, commending her appearance in a manner unfit for a parent. And now you expect belief that nothing odd surrounds her authority in your administration." The space exploded with sounds. Some inhaled sharply, some chuckled uneasily, others applauded. Trump endeavored to overpower her, elevating his volume. That was humor. All recognized it as humor. But the momentum had altered. The crowd wasn't aligning with his amusement. Jasmine remained seated, serene as always, permitting his statements to drift before responding anew. "You may jest about romancing your daughter, but you can't jest about my status as American," she declared. "You can't diminish my Americanness with words, and you can't dispel these inquiries by shouting." That phrase resonated like thunder. Trump appeared aggravated, nearly ensnared. His typical assurance wavered momentarily. He sought the moderator's support, but the moderator remained mute. The camera focused on Jasmine, and that quiet conveyed to all who claimed victory in this exchange. The crowd sensed it. The room's power equilibrium had tilted, with Jasmine steering the dialogue. And she hadn't concluded. The space buzzed with energy. Trump had just concluded bellowing over Jasmine, striving to reject all her words as falsehoods. But the group could discern his loss of command. The host attempted intervention, lifting a hand. "We must proceed." But Jasmine interjected first, and upon doing so, the whole space hushed. She bent forward a little, her hands clasped on the surface, her tone serene yet potent. "This transcends me," she stated. "This transcends you, Mr. President. This concerns every viewer currently who has faced claims of not belonging. It's about every child questioned on their true Americanness solely due to skin color." The crowd adjusted. You observed individuals leaning in, captivated by each phrase. Jasmine persisted, her delivery steady, but her statements slicing sharply. "You attempted to frame this around my essence. You sought to rally millions against me by declaring I'm not American, but I am. And no volume of shouts will obliterate that." The cameras switched to Trump. His face retained its flush, his lips compressed firmly. For once, he held his tongue. Jasmine directed toward him. "And since we address family, we must cover another aspect. We must discuss advantage. Because you may label me however, but the reality persists, you've received authority to guide this country. And you've employed it to elevate your daughter, granting her greater sway than the First Lady. And when inquiries arise, you brand them fabricators." She halted briefly to allow the phrases to embed. "This isn't hatred. This isn't vengeance. This is accountability, fairness. You can't claim reverence for your kin while slighting mine or others." The crowd initiated soft applause. It swelled into a surge of cheers. But Jasmine hadn't wrapped up. "You once declared, if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You reiterated that remark in a later interview. You have muddled family and governance. So when Americans pose questions, that's no assault. That's democracy functioning properly." The cheers amplified. An individual rose. Jasmine drew a final inhale and concluded with a phrase destined to resonate well past that space. "America isn't owned by one individual, one kin, or one shade. It belongs to everyone. And no leader, regardless of might, holds authority to dictate who qualifies as American and who doesn't." The space detonated. Individuals stood and cheered, some vocalizing. Trump remained seated quietly. For the initial time that evening, he avoided interruption. The camera lingered on Jasmine amid the ongoing ovation. Clearly, she had transformed an initial personal assault into a broader dialogue on race, authority, and the true essence of being American. And in that manner, the program concluded not on Trump's terms, but Jasmine's.